Hello everyone, this is Joseph Propati. I am the designer of Dungeon Hack, the dice game. And in this instructional video, I just want to explain the initial setup and organization of all the cards and components for Dungeon Hack. It's got a lot of cards, there's a lot of components. It takes up, a good size or a good amount of table space. And I just thought there's been a little confusion of what cards go with which, how are the decks created, how do I get started playing when I have everything, bundled with a rubber band around it. So that's what I want to do in this video. I want to explain where you lay everything out, how many cubes you'll need for the game, what cards go in which decks, and how they're all laid out. So right now, this is an initial layout for the game. This is how you kind of want everything set up. But I'm going to go through each deck and tell you how many cards and what should be shuffled, so you have a good idea of what you need once you open the box or you get all your cards and you figure out where to lay everything. So first, let's talk about the game board and the character cards. So we have our game board right here, and we will kind of take these off. All right. So here's our initial game board, and this video is going to cover just the initial 4 characters: the wizard, the thief, the cleric, and the knight. There are 2 other characters, barbarian and paladin, but it's the same setup. If you use those characters, everything is going to be identical to this setup. You might have maybe the spell books that have the barbarian and the paladin icons on them, but it's or same with the poison disease cards. They'll be for those characters, but in general, it's going to be the same setup. So we have our game board, which is laid out like this, with our quarter kind of running north and south. So the cards and the cubes. You want to have, again, you have a front line and a back line. Front line characters should be a little bit more of your stronger characters. So I like to put my cleric and my fighter up front, and my wizard and my thief in the back. Thief can use his bow in the back, and there are attacks that can be made. The nice thing, sometimes just the front characters get attacked and take damage, so you kind of want your weaker characters in the back. Once you have a larger amount of monsters attacking, then everybody will take damage. Each character has 2 cubes of the same color that go with it. So one is for the experience track, the other one is for health. So we'll do that. We have 2 red, 2 yellow, we have 2 black, and 2 blue for the wizard. And this initial color track here for the health, that's for first level. That's the starting amount of health each character has when they're first level. They cannot go beyond this when they heal themselves. Only when they get to second level can they heal up to this max health. So just remember, if you're healing or you have camp, can't go beyond these colored dice at first level. Also, make sure you have your cards showing level 1. Then we have our cleric blessing card. Make sure it says level 1. Place that here. And then we have an orange die for the camp rest track. Okay, so every time you roll a camp die, you will move on here to the right. Okay, so initial cards and cubes for the game board. Then we have our spell cards, and for the wizard, you remember there's a level 1 spell book and a level 2. When they start at level 1, you're only going to be placing the level 1 spell book, so we put that out. You could put them underneath each other, but I just stick the first one out, and then you can set this one aside. One thing you're going to want to remember is you need a cube for each one of these icons. So when you're casting spells or memorizing spells, and you're placing cubes on here to know which spell you fulfilled the requirement for to memorize that spell. Well, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 16, 19, 23. So I use 23, a bunch of these blue cubes for the wizard, and those will be used to cover up once I get to second level. I could have both spell books out when I'm at level 2. So you need to have enough cubes to cover everything if you just happen to memorize all the spells. So since we're level 1, we'll put this off to the side. And we will only need our 10 cubes for right now, 10 blue cubes. So we can take our 10 and set those over here by the spell book. Next we'll need our regroup card. You can put that off to the side next to the spell book. This is going to be taking all of our custom dice, which these are the custom dice. And at the end of each round, when you're getting ready to roll for the next round, they will be placed here, picked up from the regroup to re-roll. So you've got your dice, your regroup. This is kind of the main focus of the game board area. Now we are going to get into the cards. So we have our victory point tracker, this little card, and I use 4 brown cubes. You can use whatever you want, but this is a tracks as you keep gaining treasures or monsters or gold. You can track it on your victory point. Then we will have, let's talk about the monster cards. Okay, so here we have, you'll notice there's 2 monster decks. And the reason for that is we have groups 2 and 3, okay, and then group 1. There's 20 monster cards in group 1, and then there's, I think, 10 and 10 for the group 2. And the way this starts is you take all your group 1 and shuffle these together, okay? Once these all get shuffled together, this is the first monster deck that you'll go through, okay? You don't go to these higher level monsters until this whole deck is run through. Once all the monsters have been run through here, you'll take this discard pile, and then all of these will get shuffled together. 1, 2, and 3 groups. But for now, you just shuffle your level 1. Give yourself a space for discard, because you want to discard. You don't want to put it underneath, because you need to know when this pile runs out. So place your discards below your level in your 2, and let's get these here so I can explain them. So we have our level 1 and 2, or excuse me, group 2 and 3, and we'll shuffle these together. And then before you place that next to the monsters, there are these 3 quest monsters. Put this in here. Now you'll notice these just say monster. And the reason for that is these are random monsters. Even though they're part of these 3 quests, they are drawn just like normal monsters. And when the monster is drawn, that's when the quest begins. If you happen to have the quest, again, this is explained in the quest instructional video. If you happen to draw this random monster and it gets placed out here, if you have quest 9, you can go through that quest as you're fighting this monster. If you don't have the quest for these monsters, you'll just fight it like a normal monster. There won't be any treasure, there won't be anything associated with the quest. You'll just battle it like it's a normal monster and get your victory points. Okay, but since these are monsters and they come out randomly, and they are all of group 3, shuffle these 3 quest monsters into this group 2-3 deck. Again, these will not be drawn until after group 1 has been run through and then shuffled into this. So here's your group 2 and 3. We'll put that there. Always have your lower group to the left, and then you put your 2 and 3 group to the right. Once this has gone through, you'll have 1 deck. Okay, so that's the monster cards. Then your treasure. Treasure is made up of 2 types of treasures. You have gold, and then you have items. Now there's 20 treasure chests with gold, and then there's 10 of the item treasures. But all the cards that have a treasure background for the logo, they all get shuffled together. So items and gold will get shuffled together into 1 deck, and this is the deck you will draw from whenever you see a dungeon tile that has a chest on it. Okay? So we'll shuffle all the gold and all the items together and make 1 deck, 1 treasure deck. Now next I want to, since we're kind of talking about items, I want to talk about magic items. Every card that says magic item on it, it's part of a quest. You will never find a magic item randomly. All these magic items are all associated with a quest that you have to solve or resolve to gain the magic item. So when you see these that have these magic item logo, you don't need to shuffle them. You just need to make sure they're all in the same deck, because as you're going through the dungeon and you happen to turn over a quest tile, a dungeon tile, that let's say has 2, if you happen to have quest 2 as one of your quests, you pull this out and set it aside because you might gain this magic item, okay? It's not a treasure, you're not going to draw it like a treasure pile. These will only be pulled if you have the dungeon tile and if you have the quest card to go along with that. Okay, so you can just put these all on a deck and set these off to the side. To go along with those, let's talk about these 3 quest monsters. Now, I just showed you 3 monsters that are random quest monsters. These monsters, you'll notice, aren't shuffled in the monster deck. They will say quest on the side with the monster logo. So that way, do not shuffle these 3, this 1, 2, and 3 quest monsters into that monster deck. These are only drawn when the dungeon tile is drawn. Now you'll play it just like a monster that's in the quest tile, but if you don't have the quest card to go along with it, it's just a monster that you defeat. There's no special treasure or item or anything that you get by resolving the quest because it's just a monster. You have to have the quest card to go along with this to actually destroy the monster and then gain the items. Okay, so that's why these aren't placed in the monster randomly. These will only come up when that dungeon tile is drawn. So you will put these off to the side and you will draw them later if the dungeon tile and the quest card is in your hand. This also goes along with these special quest cards. This quest, the Widow's Request, this is a quest number 9. Okay, these will say quests and which quest they go to. This one goes to quest number 9. It's just basically, it's not a magic item, so it's not put in the magic pile. It's just a amount of gold you can get if you retrieve these by killing the monster and having this quest. So again, you set that aside. These 2 are special. These are like solvable traps. They're treated like traps. What happens is if you have this dungeon tile that shows for quest 5 or quest 6 drawn, if you happen to have these quest cards, let's say you have quest 5 and the dungeon tile quest 5 comes up, you'll notice there's a trap icon on there. You don't draw a trap card, you use this, and this gets placed out there, and this is a puzzle that's part of the quest. You have to solve this to help solve the quest. Okay, so if for some reason the quest tile comes up but you don't have the quest card, you don't draw these puzzle traps, you just draw a regular trap. Okay, so these are only based on the dungeon tile coming up and you having these 2 quest cards in your hand. Okay, and I'll explain the quest cards, but again, they're not shuffled in the traps, they're set aside and only come up when those quests come up. So that brings me to the quest cards. You have your 9 quest cards, okay? And just so you understand the cubes that you need, on quest 4, you need 3 cubes. So it doesn't matter the color, but just make sure you have 3 trackable cubes, because if you have this quest, when you go through these dungeon tiles, you're going to mark each one once you get through it. And then if you have all 3, then you can go to the end of the main part of the quest. But so this quest card needs 3 cubes for that. But you have these 9 quests, and what you're going to do is you're going to shuffle these. Okay? And so shuffled, you are going to, and per the rules, the basic rules or the set rules, you're going to draw 4 quests. Okay? And then you set these back off to the side. These are your 4 initial quests that you're going to try and resolve. And you can set these up in front of you. And as I said before, when you have a dungeon tile that comes up that has the quest, these will start to come into play, your quest cards. And that's when the monsters will be taken, or magic items will be drawn, or maybe possibly your special puzzle traps. So you can leave these up, because these are what you're trying to resolve as you're going through this main dungeon and trying to kill the big boss, but these are kind of little bonuses you can get along the way. So those are your quest cards. Then you have your spell cards. Now, every spell on the spell book has a spell card. So these aren't shuffled, and you don't start with any because you need to start memorizing these spells. But you can put these off to the side, and every time you fill the requirement, let's say you roll these and you fill that requirement, you will go through here, and now you can place this as a memorized spell in your inventory. And then to cast it, when you roll a book, you can now cast that spell, cast it, put it back into the spellbook pile, and remove these, and you've been able to cast that spell. So spell cards go along with the spell book, but they're not something you keep in your inventory until you've actually memorized the spell. So these can be set off to the side. And we'll talk about traps. So we have 10 trap cards, okay? You're going to go ahead and just shuffle these, right? Make a deck, a trap deck. Place it off next to the treasure, and make sure you leave a discard pile, because once you go through all 10, you're going to shuffle them again and make another trap pile. Okay, so these are what you'll draw from when a dungeon tile says there's a trap icon. Okay, that's what you draw. Then we have these other 5 cards. You have your door card. Whenever there's a door, this gets drawn out, placed out here. You have to resolve the door. So keep that where you can see it. And then you have your 4 poison disease cards. These, you don't leave it in a pile, or you want to have all 4 of them out, because they can affect each individual character, or even all 4 of them can be affected. So as long as you have these visible so you can see them, just place them where each one can be grabbed easily. And that brings us to our big bosses. Okay, remember your big bosses, you got 2 types of big boss, and each one has his own dungeon tile. Okay, now when you get to the big boss, once you get all the way to the right and you're at the big boss dungeon tile, you have 2 ways of doing this. You can either roll, and it's 1, 2, 3 for the lich, or 4, 5, 6 for the dragon, or if you want an easier game or harder game, pick the dragon for the harder one and the lich for the easier. They're just those are the levels based on those big bosses. So when you get to the big boss dungeon tile, you roll and then decide which one you're going to be placed. And once you place it, okay, that's when you draw the 4 dungeon cards. So if you decide, or you ended up getting the lich, that would be placed out there, and then you would take your 4 lich monster cards, and for example, you'd put them out like this. And that would make up your big boss. Okay? And I'll be explaining in another video the attacks against big boss monsters, so you can kind of see how those are resolved, and how you would fight a big boss. But these are the 2 that go together for the big boss cards. And then we have our bazaar, right? And you'll notice that there's 5 items you can get at the bazaar. So what you do is you need, or excuse me, 8. Count. So you have 8 items, so you need 8 cubes, 1 for each type item, which you can get 3 of each. So what I do is I get my 8 cubes, these use purple, put those off to the side. And then last of our large cards is our dungeon card phase tracker. So we have a red cube, single cube, that will track our entrance tile, and this is our entrance dungeon tile. As you move to the right, these are the dungeon tiles you're going to be drawing from. Quarter room, quarter, junction, or room. So as you get to phase 3, phase 4, you'll be moving this dungeon tile until you get to the big boss. So once you move and you see that it's quarter, that's the deck, dungeon tile deck, that you'll be running through. And I'll explain that in a second. So you need 1 cube for that, and we'll place that off to the side with our 1 cube on the dungeon entrance. So with our dungeon entrance, put it down here. Again, give space for cards, traps, that will be over here. And you have your little party meeple. Put that inside there. And last thing that we'll talk about is the dungeon tiles themselves. There are 4 types of dungeon tiles. Okay, and a special. That's part of the quest. So you have rooms, quarter rooms, junctions, and quarters. Each one you want to shuffle, okay, and place off to the side over here. All right, so we'll shuffle these. And make sure you give yourself room on here for 2 cards. And like I said, I just take, just to test the space, I take 2 monster cards and go, good, I've got enough room. And these are all there and there, so this way we have room here and we can draw from these our dungeon cards, dungeon tiles. Okay, this special quarter, take this one out and set it aside. If you see these 4 little pools, there's another quest card that looks just like this. When you resolve the quest and you've solved the puzzle to have these healing pools come up, you'll swap this card for the other tile, the quest tile. That means when you've solved it, you can now go backtrack to this tile and heal yourself in this room. So you can heal, then you have to go back to another room, come back, and you can heal again. So this doesn't get mixed in with the normal quarter dungeon tiles. Set this aside. That will only get swapped after that quest is resolved. And this is it. This is your general layout. So I just want to say thank you, and I hope this was instructional enough. So the layout explained everything. Thanks a lot.